Hi, and welcome to another Manapod podcast. Today, we have a great guest, Chip Conley. This guy has done it all. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's done several TED Talks and TEDx Talks. I mean, who does that, right? He's written so many books, and he's been a hotelier. Is that how you would say it? Hotelier. He started
Hotelier, whatever.
hotelier. I love it. So many cool things that he's done. He started the Modern Elder Academy and Wellness Center in Baja California, and now has one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which we can't wait to go to, by the way.
Hmm.
And he's just written a new book called
Learning to
Learning to
learning to love
Love Midlife.
midlife. 12 reasons why life
Yes, I love it.
gets
And
better with
12
age.
reasons why life gets better with age. So welcome, Chip.
Thank you.
You're only 29. I don't know how you did all of that being 29, but
I'm 63. I'm 63.
uh,
Let's
it's
um
amazing.
yeah, no, it's great to be here. I really have loved understanding what menopause is because I'm sort of going through it.
Well,
Yeah.
and menopause.com kind of started with the idea that when Mike and I were in our early 50s, we started feeling what you talk about.
Hmm.
And the big question that we thought of was from that old song, "Is That All There Is?" Right?
Yeah. Yep.
You reach this point where you wonder what is the meaning of my life and what's still ahead. And it seems to resonate with our age group. The problem has always been finding out not just am I the only one going through this, but how do I fix it? And that's kind of where I think books like yours, in particular this one, can be really helpful.
Yeah, what we're very clear on is that midlife, which is I like to define it as it's the life stage between early adulthood and later adulthood. And as we increase our longevity, midlife elongates. It's like a bridge. And some sociologists believe that the bridge is 40 years long, from 35 to 75. Others believe it's 20 or 25 years long. But what's very clear is, regardless about how long it is, what we know is people are clueless about this life stage because there's not been a whole lot of research or, frankly, any support. We have a lot of support for retirement. We have a lot of support for adolescence. Those are two life stages that sort of emerged in the 20th century. And midlife emerged as well, but all midlife got was a bad brand. The midlife.
Crisis.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. So, what I really wanted to do with this book, based upon my own personal life experience, the social science research I'd done, and then what we'll talk about later, creating MEA, the Modern Elder Academy, the world's first midlife wisdom school, is I wanted to encapsulate all of that into a book that helps people to understand how to navigate and create a roadmap around midlife, while also, as the subtitle says, understanding what gets better with age. Because we're very clear, both in our own lives, but also in the ageist messages we hear out there, that our short-term memory is not as good as it used to be. Our body doesn't look a whole lot, doesn't look anything like it used to 40 years ago. There's a variety of other things that we sort of look at and say, oh, life doesn't get better with age. And yet the U-curve of happiness research, which is global, shows that after a long, slow decline in life satisfaction from early 20s till about 45 to 50, in each decade after that, 50s and beyond, we get happier and happier.
Wow. Well, I'm 66 now. And whenever I admit to people that I'm 66, they always say to me,
It's like admitting, so don't even say it, proclaim. Admit,
I proclaim
I
that I'm
proclaim to people I'm
66.
66.
They always say, "Man, you don't look 66," but I think what they're really saying is I don't act
That
66.
is true. That is, yeah.
And I feel that. I know I look in the mirror and I see the gray and I see, well, at least, I got some hair left.
Dude, you got hair. The other two of us don't have hair, and you look like a rock star with that haircut.
All right, cool. All right. I'm digging that. All right. So Larry, plastic surgery next week, right? But I don't
Maybe.
feel it. I don't feel it. And I'm also finding out that I think I'm becoming a lot more wise in my thoughts and how I deliver messages to people. I will sit and be very quiet and listen, where I would never do that before.
Yeah.
And I'm becoming a wise elder. And you know what? It feels pretty good. Why is that happening?
So knowledge speaks and wisdom listens. Supposedly Jimi Hendrix said that. And there's something to be said for being a first-class noticer, to be able to be an observer. In fact, in the movie, The Intern with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, early in the movie, her assistant saying, "Why don't you want to hire him as your senior intern?" And she says, "He's a little too observant."
Ah, that's great. That's right.
It's a great line because it really is. I think as we get older, if we are very observant, it means that we have presence to be able, and we have peripheral vision, and we're able to see things. And Arthur Brooks' great book, From Strength to Strength, in which he actually talks about the Modern Elevator Academy and me, and I'm proud of that. He talks about the fact that as we get older, we move from fluid intelligence to crystallized intelligence. And in so doing, crystallized intelligence means we think holistically, systemically, we're able to connect the dots. And because we have four-wheel drive of our brain, we're using both sides of our brain more actively. And so what I would just say is wisdom is the result of your painful life lessons that are the raw material for your future wisdom. What I mean by that is wisdom, and if you don't metabolize your experiences, you don't necessarily become wise. So I know a 30-year-old who's wiser than the 70-year-old because they are metabolizing their experience and making sense of them. But so that's what I think we need to do as a society. And that's part of the reason why I created MEA, because there was no midlife wisdom school out there, a place where you can sort of make sense of your life experiences, get clear on what your gifts are, and then figure out how you're going to share those in the world. And so I think it's an important thing, especially as we're living longer.
Right.
I think what you're talking about, metabolizing your experiences, is important. And I think the next step, though, of comprehending them and utilizing them is one that at least, and hopefully we're the last generation who can't do that or hasn't done that. Our idea of this whole thing is, first of all, men are somewhat resistant to what they think are platitudes about, finding yourself and taking a deep dive in Lake Me and all that kind of stuff. They're very resistant to that way of talking.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, and I shouldn't say they, we are sort of, I guess, maybe scarred by the experiences of our fathers and grandfathers about what retirement means.
Yeah.
For them, it meant getting the gold watch, sitting on the couch, and waiting to die. And
Scarred and scared, both.
Yes, yeah, and that is a very deep imprint.
Yeah.
And I think our mutual friend Jed Diamond has pointed out the idea that at this age, men become very irritable, suicide rates go up, depression rates go up, and I think some of that's hormonal, but I think it's also the lack of skills on how to process what's happening. And I think maybe that's where your MEA kind of fits in.
It does, yeah. What the predominant emotion of men in their 50s and beyond is the fear of irrelevance, whereas for women it's the fear of invisibility. And it's a really two very interesting topics to unpack. On the men's side, like to go from being a PIP, a previously important person, or I'm sorry, going from being a VIP to a PIP, a previously important person, doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good to all of a sudden feel like, oh, like no one wants to listen to me anymore. And especially if you go into retirement, a lot of men retire from something, but not to something. And as a result, the average retired person in the United States watches 47 hours of TV a week. So all they're doing is retiring from a job and then moving to the TV to become a couch potato.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we really need to reframe what retirement is, if it exists at all. More and more people, by choice or necessity, are choosing not to retire. They want to actually have a portfolio career, meaning they have multiple ways of making money, or work part-time, or whatever they're going to do. Go back to school. Phil Pizzo, who ran Stanford Medical School and then ran the Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute. At 77, as a good lapsed Catholic, he decided to become a rabbi. He went to rabbinical school at 77. So we are going to see more of that. We're going to see people who are choosing to curate their life, knowing that if they're going to live till 100 potentially, you've got a lot of life left. In fact, the average age of the people who come to MEA is 54. The average age they think they're going to live till is 90. 54 is exactly halfway between 18 and 90. So you're halfway through your adult years. And yet none of us would sort of say, oh, wow, at 54, you're halfway through your adult life. But the fact is that may be the case. And therefore, what you do with those final 36 years between 54 and 90 is really important, just as important as it was between 54 and 18.
And I think, to your point about, what that gentleman did is the generation of physicians before me, many of them, if not the majority of them, define themselves as doctor so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you would ask them, who are you? They would say, I'm Dr. So-and-so, not I'm so-and-so.
Correct.
The idea of giving that up,
yeah.
They lose their identity. And I think that may be true for a lot of professions. It's particularly true in medicine. I mean, I'm working with a doctor that is a surgeon. He's 80 years old and has some issues. And fortunately, he's still a good surgeon, but he can't let go because that defines who he is as a person.
Look at Dianne Feinstein. I mean, literally, right. And many politicians who just, I'm not going to talk about good or bad Democrat, Republican. I'm just to say, like, all of them seem to have a hard time with letting go of the role, and it's so much of it has to do with the perks we get from the role, but more of it's even psychological. It's, who am I without my business card? And this is more true for men. Women have less of an issue with this generally. And why is that? Because women actually, and this is social science, not just Chip, women have more roles in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. And so if you give up one role, you still have other roles. Whereas for men, often they have two roles. And one role is their work role. The other one is their family role. And after that, for a lot of men, they don't prioritize the other roles beyond that. They may have them. They may be, a scoutmaster for their kid. They might be the son of two parents who are still living. But generally speaking, men are much more concentrated in these two roles. Therefore, when they are giving up one of those roles and they don't know what they're going to next, they are in a liminal space. And that's why I suggest that midlife is not a crisis, it's a chrysalis. And that you've got basically 3 stages for the caterpillar to butterfly journey. The middle stage, midlife for the butterfly, is the chrysalis. It's dark and gooey and solitary, and yet it's where the transformation happens. I believe that is true for people in midlife as well, midlife defined broadly. But I would just say that if you're not willing to let the transformation happen, if you're not curious about it, if you're not finding a coach or a best friend or coming to MEA for a program, a workshop, or reading my book, then you may not even have the right questions to ask yourself that help you to get unstuck from the roles that have defined you almost in a straitjacket.
Wow. So you're a California boy, right?
That's right.
Okay. So you started in San Francisco, or no, Orange County, right?
I grew up in Southern California and then came up north to go to college.
Right. And then you graduated from Stanford with your MBA. And then immediately you went into entrepreneur mode.
Yeah.
And you had an idea about taking a dilapidated old motel called the Phoenix in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. And you raised some money, like $1 million. And you made that into a very, very cool motel that everybody knew about. Rock stars would come there.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to then you became this mega hotel guy that created all these hotels and how just take us from that point to
Yeah. So at
Be the
26,
next.
at 26, I started Joie de Vivre, not a particularly practical name for a hotel company. It means joy of life in French. What I loved about it was also the mission statement of our company. We wanted to create joy. Created 52 boutique hotels around California between 1987 and 2010. And I loved it until I hated it. And in the last 2 to 3 years, I really just didn't like it anymore. I didn't want to do it. It was also the Great Recession, etc. I lost 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52. I had some suicide ideation myself. I had a long-term relationship ending. I had my African-American foster son who was an adult going to prison wrongfully. I was running out of cash. I mean, it was a bad time.
Wow.
And I then had an NDE, a near-death experience, where I was giving a speech in St. Louis, and it was signing books after my speech. And I slumped in my chair, and it was partly I had a broken ankle, which we knew, and I had a septic leg,
Ooh.
which I was on antibiotics for. And I had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics, and so I died 9 times over 90 minutes. I'd never heard of the word asystolic. That's a word that I didn't know, but that told me
Uh,
something. I would come to from like being on the other side, and they say like asystole, like wow. I didn't know what that word meant. I figured it out pretty quickly, but that actually woke me up. It was the hoteliers' wake up call to saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to really do what we at MEA call the great midlife edit. And I really needed to edit my life. The first half of our life, we accumulate. The second half of our life, we edit. And so that was my process of starting to edit. And by 50, I'd sold the company. I had a couple of years to just have a midlife atrium, a space to really consciously imagine, like, well, how do I want to curate the rest of my life? And then I was asked by the founders of Airbnb, the young founders, very young founders in their 20s, to join them and help them take this little tech startup, because this was a dozen years ago, and turn it into the world's most valuable hospitality company. And that's what I did for the next 7.5 years, 4 years full time as their modern elder, which they said I was their modern elder. I said, you're making fun of my age. And they said, well, you're twice the age of the average person here. So let's start with that. So you are older, and we think a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. I was like, oh, okay. The alchemy of curiosity and wisdom, sign me up for that. So that's what I did. And ultimately that led me to writing a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. While I was writing that book, I was down in Baja, where I had a house on the beach. And I went for a run one day, and I had a Baja aha. I had an epiphany, which was, why don't we have midlife wisdom schools? Why don't we have a place where people can reimagine, repurpose themselves, navigate their midlife transitions, and maybe even take stock of their wisdom, and maybe feel better about aging? Because Becca Levy at Yale has shown that when you shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life. So we really wanted to be a living laboratory for her research, and we've had over 4,000 people come for week-long workshops from 47 countries to our Baja campus. And in April, we open our Santa Fe, New Mexico campus.
We can't wait. First of all, we live in San Diego, so we want to go down to your Baja location because it's so easy for us to
It
drive
two
down.
hours, 2 hours,
Yeah.
yeah.
Santa
By
Fe is not
flight,
that hard either, right? I mean,
yeah.
so your big problem in life was really lack of motivation and success, I can see, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've had my failures too, that's for sure. But I mean, when it comes to personality types, I study something called the Enneagram, and I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. People don't know what that means, but you can study it. It's a performer. It's someone who goes out and gets stuff done, and defines their sense of self-esteem based upon their successes. And that's a dangerous place to be sometimes, because if I had some of my friends who took their own lives during the Great Recession, did so because their company, they were entrepreneurs, and their company went belly up. And for them, their whole sense of identity was that. So yeah, we need to see that there's personality types that we have that help fuel us to live a good life. And then there's a shadow side for every one of them, whatever personality type you have. And the more you can be conscious about the shadow side, the more you can avert it and like make sure you don't go there.
Wow. You wrote in your book, and I think I've heard you speak about this before. You started surfing
Yeah.
when you were down there. Now, that's a brave move, right? But you said your father was started scuba diving when he was 60,
Yeah.
right? Is that right?
Yeah. So I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves as we get older is at what in my life am I a beginner right now? Like instead of
Right.
having New Year's resolutions, I think, on January 1st, you should say, in what parts of my life am I going to be a beginner? Because curiosity and an openness to new experiences are both of those are variables that are correlated with living a longer, healthier, happier life. I think a question we need to ask ourselves over and over again is what is it that I know now or have done now that I wish I'd learned or done 10 years ago? And once you sort of thought about that, the second question is the more important one. 10 years from now, what will you regret if you don't learn it or do it now? And when I asked myself that question when I was 57 and I was living in Mexico part-time, and near a big surf break, I was like, okay, well, at 67, it's going to be harder to learn surfing than at 57. I'm going to start learning now. And similarly, I'm going to start learning Spanish, which I learned French when I was in high school, which is why my company was called Joie de Vivre. Um, but I had a bumper sticker in my head that said like, oh, I'm too old to learn language or to learn to surf. But the reality is when I thought of myself 10 years from now, I realized the anticipated regret that I might have 10 years from now is a form of wisdom that gives me the catalyst to do something about it now.
That's good
You know,
thinking. Good thinking. In your book, oh,
go ahead.
sorry, Larry.
No, I was just going to say there's one section in here that I read that sort of has a very generalized but kind of interesting perspective. One of your faculty members, Dan
Buettner. Yeah.
Buettner,
Yep.
has 9 variables that are correlated with living a long, healthy life. Things like moving naturally. The ones that we really push are things like, have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you want? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you out of bed? Right. Um, Prioritize loved ones. We talk about that, whether it's family or friends, and then finding a healthy tribe. I like that as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is the idea is you want to be around people that are supportive and have the same notion of where they are in life and what they want to do, as opposed to negative Nellies.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you are the sum total of the 5 people you most come into contact with or you most admire, and so if you surround yourself with, or you are surrounded with by your lack of choice, people who are constantly negative, it will have an effect on you. So, um, yeah, the blue zones work. So Dan Buettner founded the idea of blue zones, and which is a very popularized concept, and we have a partnership with them, and we do blue zones workshops at both of our campuses. He studied the 5 places in the world that have the greatest percentage of centenarians, people who've lived to 100. And he looked at what are the commonalities, and that's how he came up with his list of 9. And so I sometimes people think that the cure to longevity is biohacking, like young Silicon Valley types who have millions and billions are going out and spending lots of money to biohack themselves to never dying. And the reality is, it's actually a lot simpler than that. It's actually the 3 most important things for somebody to do are number 1, focus and invest in your relationships. And that's the number 1 variable.
Hmm.
And number 2 is stay curious and passionate and purposeful, as you said. So a purpose has a huge impact on people. And I can't think of the third one right now, but that's the short-term memory piece.
Right.
But
And keep thinking.
yeah,
That blue zone, we have one in the United States,
we
Loma
do.
Linda.
Loma
Loma
Linda.
Linda, right?
Loma Linda, for those who don't know it, is it's not the most beautiful location. It's sort of like
Right.
a bit in the foothills of Southern California.
Where Richard Nixon came from, I think.
Yeah, that area exactly. And
Yeah.
it's sort of freeways everywhere and big box stores, but it's also the number 1 location in the United States for Seventh-day Adventists. It's where they're headquartered. And Seventh-day Adventists are a tribe. So they're a tribe of people who are all about not eating meat, not drinking alcohol, exercising a lot, and believing that you can have an enormous impact on your health by your actions. And God wants you to do that. And so interestingly, it is one of the, top 5 places in the world for longevity as a result of that.
Hmm.
And then you have other people like George Burns and Mel
Yeah.
Brooks that smoke cigars and drink alcohol and eat whatever they want, right? So
It's great that, and there's also been evidence that says that having a sense of humor, your sense of humor may be the last sense that you have in your body that actually works. And so, those guys lived till they're 100 and they had a great sense of humor. So yes, I don't think there's a rhyme or reason necessarily that says, okay, if you take these certain steps, I'm a pretty healthy guy and I got prostate cancer. And I got prostate cancer when I was 57 years old, or at least maybe I had it before that, but was diagnosed with it at that point. And that was a shock because, like, wait a minute, what did I do to deserve this? And so these things do come sometimes because of reasons beyond your lifestyle. Although lifestyle has a huge impact. Let's be clear. I don't want to diminish that.
but genetics also,
Yes.
Right.
that's
Genetics, environmental, there's a lot of different things, that can affect you.
and one can affect the other as well. So yeah,
True.
so we
One
have.
of your
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, wait, sorry, it's my turn, Larry. Come
Sure.
on. Because I'm looking at your book, and in chapter 2, I'm relieved my body no longer defines me. I'm just as comfortable in my own skin. And just as I'm getting comfortable with my own skin, it started to sag. Now that's you write with a good sense of humor here, but boy, is that the truth, right?
Yeah. So there's really 2 pieces to that. So you get comfortable in your own skin, maybe by midlife. And what does that mean? It means you get a little clear about who you are, and you care less about what other people say about you or think about you. You can see your own life pattern and understand your narrative of who you are and what you have to offer. And so you get comfortable in your own skin just as it starts to sag means, like, yeah, your body starts to deteriorate. I mean, our body is a rental vehicle we were issued at birth. And the key is to maintain it, not for short-term vanity, but for long-term health. And
Right.
the reality is that you have to accept, as we get older, that it's not going to be as good as it was 30 years ago. Just like a car that looked beautiful when you got it off the lot doesn't look the same 3 years or 10 years later. So, so the key is to not so much focus on the exterior, but more focus on the interior and what does it feel like on the inside as opposed to what does it look like on the outside. Having said that, that chapter, which is one of the 12 reasons why life gets better with age, which is I'm happy that my body no longer defines me. That really speaks especially to women, because and to some degree for men, but women are physical. They're sometimes seen as physical objects, and it's their face and their body that people notice and that give them currency in the world. And yes, when you get to 50 or 60, you feel more invisible, but you also feel relieved a little bit by that because it's a lot of work to actually take care of that body. In fact, I say in that chapter, a 6-pack gets more expensive as you get older. And it doesn't mean that they charge you more at the liquor store for your Budweiser. It just means that the amount of time and energy you have to put into creating a 6-pack abs is much greater as you get older. And there's an opportunity cost for that. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't maintain their body, but if you spend all of your time maintaining your body, you do not have time to focus on all of the other playing fields of life.
Well, and there's, as a
that's
plastic
true.
surgeon, I deal with that on a regular basis, and there are, some sad stories of women whose husbands leave them when they hit, the husband maybe hits 60, 65, finds his soulmate in a 23-year-old woman or something like that, right? And then a lot of them
Yeah.
come to me like very early in that breakup and want everything done.
Yeah.
I usually will try to delay that and say, give it some time, get over this. And a significant portion of them say, you're right. I don't need to do this. I was just scared, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 main types that I see. One is the type that you're talking about that doesn't accept their new body. And you see that in Hollywood, and you see it on on all kinds of Instagram stuff of women in particular that
Hmm.
look really bad. They
Yeah.
look like old women trying to look young. They don't
Yeah.
look like young women, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you have the other group of women that come in and say, overall, I'm very happy, but I have a few wrinkles here. Can you laser them off?
Hmm.
Some cases, it might be the only thing that bothers me is my neck. And
Yeah.
you just tighten that up a little bit. But they don't want gigantic lips and all that
No,
sort of
I know, I know, I know.
stuff. That's a little less for men than women. But when we interviewed Paulina Poroskova,
Yeah.
she has remained natural and is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. But she also has been a major advocate for aging women about that concept you brought up about they more fear being invisible.
Yeah.
And she brought it up an example where she was at a cocktail party talking to a younger man, and he was very engaged until a young woman walked by, and then he sort of quickly excused himself to go after her.
Yeah.
So that it's a little different balance. One is a little bit more physical, the other for men is more
Hmm.
mental and emotional, trying to figure out what's wrong with us, I think.
Yeah. No, aging, there's no doubt that aging has its detriments. But what I really wanted to do with the book and what I try to do with MEA is to help people to see that loss is not the only um, thing that you can expect in midlife and beyond. There are some gains as well. What gets better with age? Your emotional intelligence, your spiritual curiosity, your how you value relationships, your wisdom, your ability to actually understand yourself and the track of your life, the ability to say no to things. These are things that get better with age. And
Yeah.
I wanted to really capture, when we've had 4,000 people come down to Baja and come through a week-long program, man, have we had the perfect opportunity to study this life stage that has been so unstudied. And so I'm really honored and proud of the fact that this is the work I'm doing at this point in my life. When other people say to me like, "Oh, Chip, why don't you retire?" And you know, Eric Erickson, the famous developmental psychologist, said that after age 50, after having said, "I am my business card, I am what you think of me, I am the stuff I own, I am what I control," the I am statement that's relevant for 50 and beyond is, "I am what survives me." And that could be your kids, it could be a book you've written, it could be, the political activist that you are, it could be whatever it is. But for me, I have many things that I hope will survive me. But one of them is the idea of creating books and campuses that are dedicated to helping people to find their midlife flourishing, their vitality in midlife and beyond. Because I wish my 5 friends who had taken their own lives back between 2008 and 2010 had had a program like this available to them.
Do
That
we
was
have
was that all based on just the economy and what happened to it?
So there are 5 of them, and 3 of them were, I would say that the reason in 4 of the 5 cases they did not leave suicide notes. That was like unfortunate because we didn't know exactly. But of 3 of the 5, I would say it was because of their career. 2 of them were entrepreneurs, and the businesses were going belly up. The third one had lost his job and was not and having a hard time finding a new job. I'd say, and there's more than one reason, but I think for those 3, it was predominantly that. For another one, I think he did have some, mental and emotional issues that were plaguing him, probably from childhood. It was not that obvious to people, but I would say that's what was going on. And the fifth one was chronic pain that just wasn't going away, and he had tried everything. And at some point, I think he probably got over he decided he was going to take a lot of those pain pills, and they and just end it. And so for many people it's an escape, and the more we can help people to see that there's other options rather than that option as an escape. I mean, I was driving to the Golden Gate Bridge as a hotelier who constantly had the Golden Gate Bridge on our brochures for our San Francisco hotels. I was going to go jump off the Golden Gate Bridge at age 48, and a year after I had my NDE, because I hadn't figured out how to solve my escape hatch of like what I wanted to do. And I was on my way there and I called my best friend Vanda, and she's a coach, and she was like, said, pull over to the side of the road. I want to talk to you. And as I was listening to my Sirius XM, uh, Aretha Franklin came on with Amazing Grace. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, wow. Okay. Vanda, this is like an angel. This is like Clarence the angel in It's a Wonderful Life coming
right.
down to the bridge for Jimmy Stewart. And long story short is, yeah, what was his name? Jimmy Stewart in that movie, George.
Yeah, George.
George Bailey. George
George,
Bailey.
right,
George Bailey.
right.
Yeah, and Clarence came down, and so I felt like I was touched by an angel at that moment, by talking to Vanda and by having Aretha singing Amazing Grace to me. And I drove home, and my life got better, and thank God. And gosh, there's a lot of people who don't have that angel step in, and yeah, it's so part of what I want to do so for women, they actually have men are, it used to be 5 times, now it's 4 times as likely to commit suicide as women. So, and why is that? Well, for one, men use guns more often, and that's a more lethal way of and more predictable way of dying than, using pills or other kinds of things. But the other thing is that men do not process their emotions with friends. They are feeling lonely. They're feeling like they're incompetent, and they don't have a place to talk about that. And therefore, that's why I think men have a much higher suicide rate than women. And it's another reason why I love what you guys are doing. I love what menopause is all about. I love what MEA is doing in that context. I look forward to us collaborating on some things as well, because having workshops where men are actually talking only with other men is a really a revelation. Men can do it with women in the room too, but it's a little harder sometimes because, yeah, they hold back a little bit. When it comes to talking about emotions, women are just naturally going to do it anyway. So the men may hold back and like not talk about it, and the men will hold back with other men too. But if you create the right crucible, with the right kind of life-changing conversations that we try to curate, man, do we see huge transformation in men who realize they're not alone, they have social support, and they have more options than they thought they had in terms of whether it's their career or the fact that they just got divorced, or the fact that they have a cancer diagnosis that's freaking them out.
This is, and
Thank God for Vanda answering the phone,
yeah,
by the way.
really.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean,
And Aretha
that's,
too.
yeah,
Uh,
yes.
so we have a couple things here we want to go over real quick.
Yeah.
One is something we do typically at the end of each podcast,
Mhm.
and the other is something I just thought of when we were getting ready for this, and going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You've heard of the elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you are in the elevator, either with somebody that you know is in distress, maybe somebody that you have known that
Hmm.
their lives, or just somebody that needs help, and you've got a minute till you get to their floor.
Yep.
And what are like what is like the key thing that you're going to tell them, other than to read your book,
Yeah.
to kind of pull them back from the edge?
I may start with saying, does the external weather change from day to day? Oh, of course it does. Can your internal weather change from day to day? Yes, it does. When you're feeling really sick, a bad flu, or just like feel terrible, 3 days later you might feel well. That can happen emotionally and mentally as well. So let's start by saying you are at the bottom of a pail right now, and part of what you need to do is look at what are the resources available to you to get you out of that place. Because it doesn't have to be like this the rest of your life, and you don't have to be alone in how you're feeling about it. So learning how to navigate your transitions in life is part of what we do at MEA. And it's part of what you can do by reading William Bridges' book called Transitions, or Bruce Feiler on our faculty has a book called Life is in the Transitions, or on the MEA website. There is a ebook that's free called The Anatomy of a Transition. Often when people are struggling, they're in the middle of a transition and they don't know how to get to the other side.
You are opening the Santa Fe, New Mexico Center in
Correct.
April. Is it different than the Baja Center? Or are you going
Yeah.
to offer different things there? Because if I go to Baja, am I going to want to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have people who come twice a year for a week each. So we have lots and lots of people come regularly. So Baja is on a beach, and Santa Fe is, in a high desert with mountains, and it's a 2,600 acre campus, whereas the Baja campus is 4 acres. So it's huge. It has horses, has horseback riding, equine assisted learning, etc. So the Santa Fe campus is really for people who love the American West and are fascinated by Santa Fe. The kinds of workshops we'll teach there will be very similar to the ones in Baja. So you can get the same content in both places, but some people will prefer being on the beach, and some people and going to Mexico and having Mexican culture. And others may say, like, oh my God, I love Santa Fe. I just haven't been there in 15 years. This is a reason I can go and then stay an extra 2 or 3 days and stay in town, because we're in a ranch about 25 minutes outside of town, and enjoy the food and the culture and the museums. And so a lot of people will piggyback a Santa Fe trip with coming to our campus.
And the Mexican food is different. You got Mexican food and Southwest Mexican food.
Well, that's right. So New Mexican food is different than Mexican food and has some similarities as well.
Yeah, yeah. So
which is better?
They're both great.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I thank God thank God I like both cuisines. So yeah, and both of them are very culinary hotbed kind of places. So great food.
We have several questions we like to ask people at the end of each podcast. The first one is, and we can bleep.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck. I have no more fucks left to give. That is literally a chapter in the book. So
I know, I read it.
I'm going to use fuck.
Okay.
The other question, one of the other questions is, you kind of answered this a little bit, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, or 26 before you started hotels, what advice, if any, would you give to yourself about navigating your life either the same way or in a different way?
Oscar Wilde long ago said, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." The advice I would give to myself is learn how to trust your intuition and develop that intuition and your wisdom, because over time it will serve you well. It is the ultimate advisor you have to you. So yes, get feedback from other people, but over time, the better you build your intuition, that's the ultimate friend you want for making decisions.
I love that.
And where do you think you'll be? Where would you like to be 5 years from now in your life?
5 years from now, I'd love to have MEA established. We have another campus in Santa Fe that will be opening in about 2 years, a former Catholic retreat center and seminary next to St. John's College in town. I'd like 5 years from now to have, each of these campuses robust and successful. And my role is really just to show up and be sort of the modern elder who occasionally teaches workshops and spouts the good truth about midlife and beyond. And I would be less involved as the CEO of the company. Right now I'm CEO, so I'm very involved in running the business as well. I'd love to not be running the business.
Well, you sure have the experience. That's for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
This has been great. And we're going to recommend your book. Hold it up again, Mike.
Oh, yes. I have it open. I was going to talk about the I feel as good as I'm growing old, if I'm growing old.
Yeah, he can't even read the book. So
I can't even read it. I'm so sorry.
Hold it up so other people can buy the book.
The spiritual life. Okay, never mind.
Try the audiobook. Try the audiobook.
Yes, No, I don't. I should have put my glasses on.
So the book is Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age by Chip Conley.
Right.
You can't find a more expert source for this kind of information, because he's walked the walk. He's not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
And you can get the book on Amazon. We'll put the thing down there. Check out MEA at meawisdom.com and look at the places. They really look amazing. They're actually surprisingly affordable
Mm.
for the what you get from going to the resort.
Mhm.
So check that out. Chip, thank you so much for doing this, and I know we're
Sure.
going to have the opportunity to do more of this as time goes on.
Yeah, look forward to having a menopause workshop with you guys.
There you
There
go.
you go.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chip.
Thank you,
Thank
Chip.
you. All right.